This time on Shift Points, we get some pulleys on the front of this engine and we get the air conditioner charged. Thanks for joining. One thing that we're gonna do now, especially now that this air conditioner's on here, that compressor and everything is gonna be pulling a lot of power and stuff like that, is we went ahead and pulled the old battery cable out. It's probably something we should have done to begin with when we first started working on this truck, but they were very usable at that point. But with this extra load and everything that's on it, we went ahead and pulled those out. And we're really glad we did, because if you look at this battery cable, it's extremely stiff and has been in there a very long time. And what can happen, and it actually happened on my truck, was if there's a little bit of a tear or a little bit of a break in here, that'll kind of start arcing inside of this, and it'll end up making a solid spot inside of this battery cable. It can cause all kinds of craziness to start happening. Truck won't start and different things like that. And it can, what happened on mine is it actually burned up the starter when it did that. So that's not good. Initially, we're going to go to Battery Cables USA like we normally do. Decided to just take a trip up to the Napa store and see what they had, and found out that the battery cables that they have in stock up there are actually all made in the US, which is what we're always trying to do, is try to get this stuff made in the US if possible. So if we look at these battery cables, they're actually super nice. They're single, they're 1 gauge instead of the single aught that we use on other stuff, but this is going to be more than enough for this truck. And like I said, all this stuff's made in the U.S. Top post, it's going to be, you know, one of these will go under whichever one we decide to make the negative, will go under the starter bolt to make sure it's got a good ground, and then the other one will go up to the positive side of the starter. So that's really good. I would say the only problem with these is they're going to end up both being black instead of one being red and one being black, but that's honestly what the truck had it in it to begin with. I'm sure from the factory they were both black. So, you know, we'll figure out a way to make sure that these are known, whether we put some like red shrink wrap over the positive one or whatever we need to do to make sure it's known which one is which. But this is just what they had in stock. They probably could have ordered them, but this is what they had in stock, so we got them, brought them in. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in so I can get the battery cables in, and then I can get the positive and the negatives for the vintage air stuff hooked up. So since we run all these lines, I don't think I actually showed that in the last video of the kind of the finished lines being run. This is the hard line that we were missing that they got sent to us pretty quickly. So that's connected up in here. I still have to run the heater hoses for all this stuff too. But with that being said, this loom of cable is kind of run in a way I don't really love. So I'm going to end up unplugging it from the binary switch here, pulling this out, and rerouting this probably kind of along the firewall and then down this way maybe. I haven't decided just yet, but I don't like it just kind of, it's just out here in the middle of nowhere. Nothing really good to tie it up to. So I do have to fix that. So I'm going to fix that and put the battery cables on and get all this stuff terminated at the same time. So I think it should work really well. One thing that we didn't do in the first episode when we were working on the power steering that you have to do is actually clearance the front bumper brace for that power steering box. So Dad's going to go ahead and do that now. Probably enough. I think it's going to need more here, I think. I'm gonna catch you guys up on what all we've got done here. We've been working on the underhood stuff. We actually ended up rotating this compressor. So this is a pattern on a square. We rotated this one notch, one set of bolt holes around, and it really helped the situation a bunch. It got these hoses kind of out of that bind. You remember seeing those in during the last video. So we got that done, got those tightened back up, so we should still have access to everything. I have this heater hose run, the pump is in place. I still have to ground it. The hose is run behind that bracket over there and then connected up to this the upper port on the intake. Now the only thing we've got left is to run this other heater hose over and then run it into the water pump here. I've got some heater hose down at the house I'm gonna bring up and get that put in place. The other thing, we got what's gonna end up being the negative battery cable. It is run. We're going to get some red heat shrink and put on each end of the positive battery cable. That's supposed to be here tomorrow. So when we get that, we'll get that put on each end of that just so it's very clear on which one's the positive, which one's the negative, since they're both black. We'll get that routed, and then the only thing we'll have left is connecting up these wires to the positive and to the grounds, and then we think we should be ready to start charging this thing. So we want to definitely do that during this video. The other thing I want to show off real quick is this Champion radiator. It is it's not a USA made radiator, unfortunately. Like I said, we try our best to get USA made stuff as much as possible, but I have one of these in my Jimmy and it has done really good. It's an all aluminum radiator. It looks really good. It went in pretty decently. We got the 3-core instead of the 3-row instead of the 2-row, just to give this thing a little extra cooling. And Dad had to do a little bit of tweaking on this upper bracket to get it to go over the radiator, make sure it's held down, or the radiator hold down. We had to kind of bend out those just a little to accept it, but in general, not too bad. It's very solidly in there. It's a good looking radiator, and like I said, the one I have has worked really well so far. So that's in place. So we are back working on this 1966 Chevrolet truck. We finally just kind of bit the bullet and decided, hey, we don't think there's enough surface area on that power steering pump to really drive it without causing some sort of issues down the road. So we went ahead and ordered a triple groove crank pulley. We ordered this stuff from Speedway, triple groove crank pulley, and a double groove power steering pump. So the two belts that were already on there, that you guys have seen back in previous videos, they're gonna stay. So that's gonna all stay the same, but the only thing that'll change is that triple groove and then the double groove on the power steering pump. There'll be one belt that goes between the two of them. So there's basically one belt fully, its whole purpose is to drive that power steering pump off the crank, make sure that that does what it's supposed to do. So we went ahead and pulled the belts off of this. Dad used this to take a measurement on a belt. Used the pulleys that were already here to kind of get a measurement on how long it needed to be. Somewhere in the 35.5 to 36.5 range is how long that needs to be to wrap around that. So now we're going to go ahead and pull the power steering pulley off and the crank pulley off that's already here. We'll just put these back, and then we'll get the new ones put in place. Again, we got those from Speedway. So hopefully everything will still stay lined up like it's supposed to. We'll get these two in place, and that should solve any sort of potential issue that might have happened if we did not have that belt solely focused on pulling that power steering pump. So let's get these on, check and make sure everything lines up still. Head up to the Napa store. We got to get some antifreeze for this thing. We got to get another belt for this thing. We're going to get some more antifreeze for the red truck. So you guys will either have seen or will see that truck. We had a little bit of a leak at the thermostat housing, so we had to dump the antifreeze. We'll have to get some more to put back in it. But anyway, so we're going to head up that way once we get these on and check everything and get that taken care of. Well, it was kind of we'd opened the box and it was kind of weird. We saw a box that showed a double groove, and it showed one that said a triple groove, but it had a single. But it's actually with this kit from Speedway, it doesn't say it online, but it just describes it as a triple groove. It's actually a two-piece deal. You have to have the single groove And the double groove.
It's got indexes in here.
Yeah, and it's got these indexes that keeps everything lined up, and it makes it a triple groove. So it's a little confusing when you open the box because you think you've got two pieces instead of one, and we'd open the single first and kind of look like it sent the wrong thing, but it's actually a combination deal that you have to use. That was the only place I was able to find a triple pulley. I'm sure there'll probably be 20 people tell me where there could have been one. That's fine. Tell me. That'd be great to know. But that Speedway one was the only one that I was able to find pretty quick. But to be fair, I was on the road while I was doing it. So we found that. Let's see if it works. Hopefully it works good. All right. So we are wrapped up in under the hood right for now. So basically what we need to do is we're going to take the red truck that's over there in the main bay that we normally work in, and we're going to just swap these. We're going to pull that over there so you guys can see you don't have a ton of just extra room in here. And when we first came in here, we didn't think that we would have enough time to go ahead and swap the gear into it. We thought that might have to come a little later, but knock on wood, we've been kind of staying ahead of schedule on this thing. So hopefully, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and take the red truck that we had to pull the thermostat housing off of to try and get it from leaking. So we worked on that a little bit. You can see that in one of the other videos that we'll have up. So we worked on that, and now that we've got it back together, we're going to swap these trucks, move that over there so we've got a little more room to pull the axles so that we can pull the gear out of this thing, ring gear and pinion, and get the 308 ring gear and pinion put in, which is what he asked for. It was running the RPMs were running a little high, especially when he was out on the interstate and stuff with this thing, so that's going to make a huge difference. So we got everything wrapped up in here. Dad got the fan shroud on, got the fan back onto the motor. We went ahead and put power steering fluid into this. You guys saw us last night get these belts put on, so we got that triple groove pulley onto the crank. So hopefully you can kind of see that. Running out of room here, to be honest. So we got that triple groove down here on the crank. That comes off the front of that and drives this power steering pump. So we definitely got enough surface area now. We have the second belt that drives the water pump, crank, secondary on the power steering pump and the alternator, and then the third belt is driven off the crank and the water pump, and is driving off the crank, driving the water pump and the AC compressor. So this is about as safe as you could get. Me and Dad were talking about it this morning. If this belt here came off, you still should have enough service area on this second belt to at least keep your power steering to where you can get somewhere and get off the road. If you don't have power steering, it's not the end of the world, but this should at least save it enough to where you could get wherever you needed to go. If this belt went, at least the water pump's still going to be driven off that secondary belt that's going over the AC compressor. You are going to lose your alternator, so you're probably you might hurt your battery, but you're at least not going to heat up the motor so bad that you kill it. And the same thing over there. If that belt goes, no problem at all, because the only thing you lose your AC compressor. So you lose air conditioning. That's fine. You can get that fixed. So this is about as safe of a setup as you can get using these three belts. So whenever we get this, we're going to get this thing down now. Now that we got it back together, get it down, get them swapped so that we can start working on the more of that stuff. We can finish up the rest of this stuff that we've been working on this thing over there and get the red truck over here since it's kind of in a running state currently. So we'll go ahead and get these swapped. We'll get this thing down. I'll show you guys that. No power steering? Oh, I guess it did have to fill the box up, didn't it?
I filled it. fill the reservoir up. I you steer it from side to side, but you get that cap off. Looks like it ain't no fluid in it yet.
Oh, I guess it did have to fill the box up, didn't it?
Well,
Yo, it ain't nothing.
I steered it from you steer it from side to side, but
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So off camera, we did fill up the reservoir and then steer it back and forth to get some all in the system.
Nothing.
But we need to add some more to it, basically.
Better than you are.
That alternator belt looks loose. It's good. Cut it off, check it, and check the loops again. I think just keep it straight. Something pretty cool. Got a 50s body style, 60s body style. At home I have a 70s body style, and then I have my 80s body style. So we've got 4 decades worth of Chevrolet trucks sitting here, which is pretty cool. There's actually an aught down there too. So technically 5 decades of Chevy trucks worth of it here. All right, you guys saw us yesterday get this truck over here onto this side of the shop. So today, the goal is to get the majority of this stuff that we have left on this truck knocked out, at least in the next few days. The plan is to get the sway bar on the front if possible today, and then get the new ring gear and pinion in. Dad, what did we put in this truck? Because I completely screwed that up on our first video. What rear gear did we put in it?
When it originally came down here, I put a Postrac unit and went from a 373 to a 342.
Yep.
Which I thought it needed to be geared higher. He came back down when we was putting the air, when we started putting the air conditioner and the power steering on it. He said, could you change the gear? Well, I kind of panicked because I thought he wanted the 373 back in it. He said, no, he said, I'd like to have it geared higher. So anyway, we ordered a 308 for it, which I think the way he's going to use this truck will work great.
Perfect, yeah, that's good. So we're planning to get that in. Like I said, we finally got the Performance Online sway bar in the other day, so we're planning on getting that thing in place as well. So we'll kind of talk you guys through that process and what all we do. Yesterday, something I don't think I actually showed, we did wrap up a couple of other things on this truck. One of them being something we talked about, I believe, but I don't remember if I actually showed it, is this bumper brace here had to be modified. It had to be trimmed to clear that, to clear the steering box down there. So you can see that bracket. You can see the bracket that's under there that bolts this new steering box to the frame. We did go ahead and get that cut, and I got it put in place yesterday. We tightened up the pitman arm because that was actually still loose, so we went ahead and got that tightened up. When we first started the truck up, we did have a little bit of a leak out of this power steering line here, so we went ahead and got those tightened up again. After that, the power steering really worked great. And if you guys watch it as we pull it out of the other side and bring it over here, you can see just how much easier this thing is to drive. I don't know if you guys saw the story that we put up whenever we first brought this truck in, but we were putting it into the shop at that point, and it was a hassle to drive at low speeds in a parking lot. So far, so good on this Performance Online power steering conversion. That's done really good. Installation was pretty straightforward, I would say, and performance so far, without getting it out on the road, at least in the parking lot level, really good. So okay, we're gonna get started on the rest of this stuff. All right, I wanted to show this real quick. So some of the work that we did whenever we first had this truck in the first round was rebuilding the drum brakes and changing out we changed it over from the 6-lug to the 5-lug conversion. Couple reasons why you do that. I mean, the biggest thing is this 5-lug conversion or this 5-lug versus the 6-lug gives you a lot more options on wheels and things like this. This is a 5-on-5 bolt pattern. It's not the 5-on-4 3/4, right, Daddy?
Yes.
For Chevrolet. Chevrolet car has a 5-on-4 3/4. I always want to say 4 1/4, but it's 4 3/4. So this is the 5-on-5 conversion. Like I said, that's the truck size. So when we did that, we did rebuild the drum brakes, so you can see all the new springs and everything that are in here. This thing did need new wheel cylinders, so it has pretty much all the new stuff. We've got the wheel cylinders, all the new, mostly the new springs, everything that came with the kit itself. Parking brake is adjusted, so everything, all the brakes are working. This is a set of Speedway axles, so that was how we got this to the 5-on-5 pattern, was this set of Speedway axles. And now we will drain the center section, get that cleaned out, and then we'll go ahead and get the C-clips out, pull the axles out, and then we can start changing that rear end. So we got the C-clips pulled out, so we got the rear end drained, we got all that out. That's all over here. We are going to get some new, that stuff's super fresh, but you know, we're going to go through another break-in with this other ring gear and pinion, so we're just going to go ahead and get some new rear end grease. So we got the cover off, got that drained. In these rear ends, there's a C-clip that holds the axles in place, so you have to take and press that axle in, pull the C-clip out, and then it lets the axle release out here like they are now. So then Dad's took the caps off on the inside, so let me show you guys under here what that looks like. Alright. So you can see this whole assembly is very fresh because it's all brand new. Dad put positive traction in this, and then put that new ring gear and pinion in place. So, I mean, we're basically pulling out this brand new one to replace it with that 308 gear. But it's about comfort and making this truck more drivable. And around here, pretty much, if you're going to go somewhere, you got to get on 26. So you need to be able to run this thing, you know, 65, 70 miles an hour pretty comfortably. So that gear will help that happen. Show you guys while we're under here. I know I've mentioned Tom. I think I mentioned Tom Mason in the first video about this truck and kind of some of the work that he does. And these are some of the tailpipes. And man, just yeah, such a good job. This is basically the same setup that he run on my truck and basically on the Jimmy too, with the dual exhaust with the turbo mufflers on it. I think it's just a perfect setup for these style trucks. Just has a good sound, sounds really nice, but it's not just like droning, just kills your ears when you're going down the road. It's a really good level. So you can see those tailpipes under there. So we'll go ahead and get this unit pulled out, and then we'll start working on getting the new stuff in. There you go.
Can you catch that pinion?
Yeah, I can.
I'm gonna back it up against it. Just watch that thing, it'll come out. I'll do it.
Taking apart our rear end. What are you doing?
I'm gonna back it up against it. Just watch that thing, it'll come out. I'll do it. What?
No. Just waiting on you. Camera's rolling.
Wonderful.
Holding up progress. I don't think you'd make it in NASCAR. Nothing.
Would if the ring gears and pinions made it 500 miles.
I'll take the gun spun at 20,000 RPMs.
They really don't find ring gear and pinion setup.
So, Took a little fighting, but we got this all back together. Had to put it in. Dad checked it and set it up, made sure everything was where it needed to be, checked backlash and checked the pattern and everything. Pulled everything back out, put the crush sleeve in, new pinion nut and everything, and got everything locked in. We already have the axles back in place too, so the C-clips are put in place and everything looks really good. Dad said it should be really quiet because the pattern and everything looked really nice. So that's complete. So now this has got the 308 gear in it. I've got the cover over on the bench with the gasket. We'll get it thrown up and put in place, and that'll have this pretty much wrapped up once we get the drive shaft hooked back up. So one thing I had done off camera that I kind of forgot about to show on camera was actually calibrating these controls. So these are the deluxe controls I've told you guys about. Those controls, they're all electric, so there's one plug in the back of them, and that plugs in here to the ECU for this system. All this vintage air stuff servo based, so it's all electric based. But to make sure these are in the right position, you have to calibrate them. So you actually set them into this position to begin with. So you turn that left side all the way up and leave the other two down, and then you turn the truck on and you connect this little jumper wire. When you connect that jumper wire into this gray wire that's already terminated here, so you connect that in here, and this has to be touched for 5 seconds. You'll touch it to a ground. I was curious about how I was going to do this because it's so short, but if you're doing one of these, it's pretty neat. This little screw here is a good enough ground to do everything. So with this being attached to this bracket and then that being screwed into the body, that's giving you a good enough ground to handle all this. So you plug this in, turn the engine on, and then just connect this to ground here, hold it there for 5 seconds, and you'll hear the fan speed change. So when that fan speed changes, you can you let off, and then you change the position of these again to like this. And once you get that like that, you do it again. So then you connect that back to ground, and then you'll hear the fan speed change. Then everything's calibrated. You pull this off, and you can do whatever you want with these. While we charged it, everything was working exactly how it was supposed to. I think I showed you guys that whenever you pull the headlight switch and the dash lights come on, which we might, there you go. Let me turn this off. So now that the dash lights are on, this actually lights up too. So let me pull that switch so you can kind of see what that looks like. So they go off, come on, and then if you also, this right here, if you can see it, it says AC, that'll light up blue whenever the air conditioner is on. So they're here, this side's your fan speed, I mean. The middle one is defrost, floor, or dash, so you can decide all that. And then you kind of have your heat versus air conditioning switch here. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I'm really, really happy that we went this way with these, because ease of use, really, really easy to program, really easy to get plugged in and make work, and also just look really good. It goes fully electric, you know, like I said, that's all electric. All this is controlled. In my brain, that kind of means that all of this stuff should work together a lot better than trying to modify any sort of the old manual controls or anything like that. So a little more expensive, but worth every penny. Well, you guys saw it. Ronnie didn't let me put him on camera. Ronnie came up, showed us how to run this thing. So we got all the gauges and stuff. I told you all about that. We got the gauges and everything. We got this thing evacuated, run it for about an hour under that vacuum pump. Let it fully evacuate all the everything out of it. Evacuate any sort of fluid or anything like that to get that out of there. So we got that cleared out, and then we got it charged up with Freon. That thing's got an ice box in it. I'll tell you, when we had the door open here to keep while the truck was running, and you could open up the door of the truck and you could feel the cold air hit you. So it's a really good system. So far that's all charged up. While we were running it to get all the Freon in, the belts and everything did exactly like they were supposed to. So that is all good too. The only thing I've got left on the air conditioner really is I gotta tie up this a little bit and make sure it don't try and do anything crazy, and I'm going to I gotta tidy up some wires under the dash, the ones that came out for this pump control. So that's all good. I think we'll probably just call it on this one. I know I said we were gonna put the sway bar on. We run into a little bit of difficulty with the sway bar, I'll be honest. So we haven't figured that out exactly what we're going to do with it. So I'll probably save that for the next video. Next video, we'll talk about putting that sway bar on. We're going to talk about, you know, just wrapping up the little odds and ends, like getting the glove box put in, just little stuff with the vintage air system. And then we're going to go drive this thing, do some test driving, and make sure everything does good before it goes back to Eddie. So thank you guys for joining. We'll see you guys next time. Make sure to subscribe when it pops up in the center of the screen, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks.